And sometimes, like the second time, you better just to get your boots wet and be done with it. This morning is incredibly deceptive. Weather's supposed to be turning again, as it seems to be doing every couple of hours at the moment, as it's first week of October, so we're fully into spring. We're heading along the Partia River Loop walkway, because not everything needs to be a big adventure. It's just about getting out and exploring. So let's do that. So a game of patience is a game that I won't win. Unfortunately, in the walk back to the bus to change lenses, the tide's come in just a little bit too far to get the shot that I was hoping for. So as the tide comes in, there must be a sweet spot where the lookout, this little concrete hoodaki, and one of the breakwaters of the Partia River all align perfectly. With the waves breaking on it, you get a big shoot up of white water and foam straight up in the air above the sand dunes, and looks quite spectacular. So that's a bit of a tip for anyone out there who's a little bit keen on photography and has a little bit of patience. A lot of patience to any degree more than what I've got. So the first Partia meatworks began in 1883 and finally, in its last rendition, closed its gates in 1982, 99 years later. Without its fair share of trouble in that time, fires in the late 1800s, since it's been closed, there's been fires that have destroyed many of the buildings. Obviously the concrete remains in a real state of decay, and since one of my earlier trips, it has all since been fenced off, and so you can't get in to have a look around. Well, that's not necessarily where I intended to go today. I can definitely recommend it if you've got half an hour to kill in Partia. Some really interesting history and really interesting perspectives on the meatworks and so on. Also very quiet, though it is Monday morning. Don't know if you can see the traffic in that line, but man, maybe I should have gone the other way. Right, so I'm here at the Natoro track, the lower reaches of Mount Taranaki, and so North Egmont. One of the problems with the bus is you're a little bit limited where you can actually get to. And I can honestly say from the beginning that getting to North Egmont is actually a bit harder than getting to the Mangere Road end and Stratford if you're in a bigger vehicle. But let's get into this. So this track's right near the edge of the ring plane, and so down some quite dense bush, very low land, but had a lot of rain. Never typically done these lower tracks, but this is part of my plan to walk all of the tracks in Egmont National Park. One thing about Taranaki is you're never short of a river crossing, and sometimes, like the second time, you better just to get your boots wet and be done with it. A lot less risk of slipping and breaking something, but sometimes we have to learn these lessons the hard way, on camera. So one thing I'm coming to understand, and especially through this process of wanting to walk every track in Egmont National Park, is that by focusing on the big epic things, we miss some of the beautiful small things. Instead of taking the short bit of time that we've got and enjoying it, we wait until we've got lots of time to do big things. Memories are a snapshot in time. Moments. Those moments are part of a much bigger picture, but we don't often remember the bigger picture. It can be a moment out of a day, it can be a moment out of a week. It's about slowing down, taking opportunities. This morning it would have been very easy to not go and do anything because I couldn't do anything big. But by taking an opportunity, gain different perspectives of the Partia freezing works. Could have rushed on to New Plymouth because the forecast looks bad and I can't go and do a big trip. But I've done the work I needed to do today, and I've got a couple of hours. I'm going to get out and enjoy the world. Capture moments. I can say as well, there's not a huge amount of bird song. There is a lot of keraru, and because it's so quiet, when they seemingly fall out of a tree behind you and break branches and then fly off, you jump into the middle of next week. So currently I'm feeling like it's after Christmas. There's definitely birds around. There was 2 or 3 tui there. Very, very quiet. So I'm going to continue on this track up to the visitors centre, because that's what I intended to do, but I have no idea how the dock sign versus the website and everything else is so different, because topo maps and everything else say that that is the Ngātoro loop, but there is also no sign at the car park where I parked the bus, which the name was on the sign there. I can't remember, but not feeling quite so bad about their timing now. I take back those words I said. Okay, so that is the Ngātoro loop track. I'm gonna have to go back to the topo map because that's got me buggered. Well, that's different. I have absolutely no idea where that track looped off. Really don't. So I'm going to investigate that. But last time I was here, there was a visitor centre here. Though an hour ago, you couldn't see that mountain. So, Ngātoro track. Right, so future me here. And the Ngātoro track gets confusing because Doc don't list it online except for with the Waiwakaio track as a loop, which encompasses the ram track and so on that I'd referenced. So I'll put a bio up on the website. Track. So 2 hours, hour 35. But it does say via the Ngātoro. Ngātoro is via that track. I cannot work out how. I did see what looked like it used to be a track that just came to a dead end and very overgrown. And a big, what looked like a big cliff face that you would have to go down. So I'm a little bit lost as to what's going on there. Having more time on my hands, I would probably have actually come back down ram track and made a loop of this, because ram track is also one that I haven't done. There's another little loop track in there that's 45 minutes, but given the time of day, it's wise not to push my luck any further. That was certainly longer than I intended. So let's head back to the bus. Could be pushing my luck. Certainly cooling down. The Ngātoro loop track that is online leaves from that sign, but it loops around with the Makatawa track and comes out above where the visitor centre used to be. So that's where the confusion has come in. And so they are two very different tracks. Also wanted to say that that track is the first track in a very long time that I've not picked up any rubbish, and that's because I didn't find any. Otherwise I would have picked it up. All I found was a Doc 2000 trap sticker, which begs the question, do they really need those stickers? And if so, should they be taken off before they go into the bush to avoid that? But all in all, well done everybody, no rubbish. Also, spotting that the entire car park up the top is pretty much a construction zone suggests that tomorrow I'm not trying to get truant up there because I don't know if I'll be able to turn around. That could pose a problem. So that means that my run to Bell Falls is off the cards for this trip. Now I'm going to put it out there. Now I haven't looked into this, so hear me out, but I don't know what was wrong with the old visitor centre at North Egmont here. It always seemed adequate. I don't know how many years it had been there, but it never seemed run down. It seemed to get the job done. I'm trying to get my head around spending lots on a new visitor centre when there's so many tracks on Taranaki that are closed due to lack of funding and lack of resources, which arguably would get more people here too. Namely the Round the Mountain track, and again I've addressed this recently, how over my lifetime, my adult years, and being interested in tramping and looking at this area but never quite getting here, that a lot of these tracks are closed to non-existent because of, hey, some of it's erosion and otherwise. But so one thing I'd point out here is that the lake dive hut burnt down in 2000 under suspicious circumstances, which I think I've talked about once before. It was estimated to cost between 450 and 800,000 to rebuild. The latest media update was 2022. So between Waiawa Gorge and North Egmont, if you've parked there, or Waigongoro Hut, you're looking at 14 to 16 hours. So the only viable way to be able to do this track is still a very big day from Dawson Falls. And the only way to be able to complete a circuit is between 11 and 13 hours if you've got a vehicle at Dawson Falls. That combined with the Stony River and from Holly Hut to Kahui Hut being closed, those two things make a around the mountain circuit impossible, because it's also prohibited to camp in the national park now. Again, there may be some reasoning for this, but some of these things do seem like vanity projects that I guess drive the tourist dollar, which is what everything's focused on. We need to get income from somewhere, but yeah, just interesting. I'm sure I won't be the only one thinking it. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I'm always open to different perspectives and so on. Won't entirely call it a criticism, it's an observation and raising it for discussion. So I have no idea how far I've gone because my watch has gone flat, but it's quite a walk back down this road. Much like coming back down the Mangere track, it's quite dull and leads me to wanting to run. These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. Now, a little bit outside of my usual realm, but I do love me a good derelict building, and so this is actually the Barrett Street Hospital in New Plymouth, and it is very much private property. You're not allowed in. When I was at high school, it had been abandoned then. A lot of those buildings that were around then have now been demolished, but these ones I think may have still been in some form of use. But yeah, back when I was in high school, we did explore some of the abandoned buildings, which were incredibly creepy. One thing that is really interesting there is it's obviously had some work at some point in its life. You got three buildings, or three parts of the building: asbestos roofing, dichromatic tiles and concrete tiles. Three very different eras of building. Sorry, that would be clay tiles. So back when I was at high school, there was actually a lot more of these buildings here, and because I weren't driving a really obvious bus and wearing a bright orange hoodie, I actually went and had a bit of a look around them, which was really, really cool. Well, shouldn't have been in there, but actually probably should have been at school, which is why I'm trying to make a life for myself on YouTube now instead of actually having a career. But that's another story. You run a quick lap around the block and see if there's any of the other buildings that I can get photos of from the road. But if not, carry on to the next thing. Still very much dodging terrible weather at the moment. So I'm glad that I got out and did that trip yesterday. Gotta say, you just can't beat the grand old architecture. So this morning, just before I head back, I've decided I need to come to Barrett Reserve. And so over beside me here is Cowling's Kauri plantation, and this is the I believe the southernmost plantation of kauri, so it's not natural. It's not a naturally occurring strand. This was planted by Fred Cowling many years ago. I can't remember the exact year. And at the time, it was believed that kauri wouldn't grow this far south. But they're intensively planted, as you can see, and grow incredibly tall and incredibly straight. They've been quite successful. So really easy tracks, they're all benched, very minimal mud, so hence I'm quite literally doing them on my way to work in my work clothes. The bird song in there is incredible. 2 loops, they say about 20 minutes each. So this is one of those lesser known parks and reserves within the New Plymouth area. So I'd also recommend checking out Barrett Reserve if you haven't checked that out already from one of my previous videos. So this is the Raywood bushwalk part of the track, and the track is a little bit more how you going, and I would probably recommend something other than your docks for doing this one, but it's not out of the question. So I reckon it's about now that I tell you to pump up your tyres, lace up your boots and get outside. As the weather improves, there'll be a few more bigger adventures happening. This has been a bit of a work trip, but stuffed a few little explorations in there. If I look at the sign, I'll know which way I'm going to get back out of here. This way. And over here's the Rotakari Lagoon, not to be confused with Lake Rotakari at the back of Eltham, which we've visited once before. So Lake Rotakari is a predator-proof sanctuary. Here we go, we've got a better viewpoint.